Of course.
What's up, guys? This is Mike Bledsoe here with Matt Baird. This is Barbell Shrug interview series. Something we're trying new, trying to go live and seeing if this Spreaker thing works. I learned about this from Mr. John North, and it seems to be serving him pretty well. So, if
He's a lot
you're
better guest than me.
I don't know about that. Y'all go like as far as interest goes, y'all are pretty close. But real quick, make sure if this is the first time you're listening to Barbell Shrugged, this is just a quick interview. Um, if you want to see the whole show with me, Doug, and Chris Moore, then you ought to check out barbellshrug.com. We have a newsletter there. You can go sign up for that, and we'll notify you anytime we post anything new. All right. So we're sitting down with Matt Baird right now, and we're doing our first remote interview with him. So we're stepping off into new territory, and the reason we're talking about him first is he is one of the coaches that you can hire on barbellshrug.com if you go to the shop, and if you want someone to program for you and tell you how not to screw yourself up. He's a good guy for that. But in addition to that, he's ranked number 2 in the world for the CrossFit Games Open. We're in week 2. So can you tell us a little
We
about
do.
that, Matt?
Yeah, man. First of all, thanks for having me on. I'm trying to be cordial because this is a phone interview and I can't look at you strange when I compliment you in the show. Um, but yeah, man. This is an interesting concept. Like I said, I'm sure the listeners would have rather heard John North and him talking about big weight rather than competitive exercise for time and reps. But I guess I'm the only person you can get a hold of. So thanks for having me again. So, dude, yeah, man, pretty excited. Kind of been talking to some different people over the last few days based on result, and I'll tell you the same thing kind of I've told them, and it's that obviously I'm very happy, getting off to a good start, but by no means does this mean anything in terms of placement for the regional or the games. All it does is really provide a bit of confidence moving forward, right? It's a competition, and I think that competitors that say that the Open doesn't matter, I think that's more of an ego thing because we're competitors and we're in a competitive sport. And any time that you can compare against your peers, whether in your region or in the world, it's going to serve a positive purpose. It's either going to, humble you and sort of force you to recognize that maybe you need to change your training strategy based on, kind of what you interpret that HQ is going to be throwing at you for later competitions. Or it's going to serve as kind of like hey, we're on a good track, but I don't have any kind of delusion of this means that I'm going to win this or win that. It's kind of one of those things where you take it week to week, and if you do well on that week, you're able to sort of assess and be in a positive position, and it serves as kind of just a confidence platform, but the biggest thing that I've been talking about most, man, is just if anything, it forces you to be more mentally tough because, dude, I would be lying if I said I didn't like seeing my name next to, guys like Dan Bailey and Rich and Josh. And these are guys that not only I admire as men, but as competitors. And so it's one of those things where, I obviously don't want to see my name drop. But at the same time, CrossFit is a very humbling sport, and it's you could do great week 1, and all of a sudden a burpee wad come up, and you are a bigger guy, and you get 4 less burpees than the guys at 5'6", and you're 6'2" or something, and all of a sudden you are no longer talked about. So it's one of those things where it provides a good feeling moving forward, but by no means has this cemented me or anything about the upcoming season.
Now, some people don't think that it matters if how they do in the Open as long as they get to regionals, but it does matter about what heat you're going to be in. Do you see a lot of benefit from being, holding those first, 5 to 10 spots so that you can be in that particular heat?
Oh, dude, here's the deal. I have been pretty, in terms of the average person, I guess I've been pretty successful, right? I've gotten top 8 or 9 in the Open the last 2 years in my region, and in 2011 I finished, in 7th, and I was in 3rd place going into the second day and kind of lost my podium position and had one finish outside the top 10. And in 2012, I was in 3rd and kind of tweaked my back and fought my way through and had to withdraw, I think, in 8th place. So in terms of, I don't view it as success, but, you could view it as, I've been decently successful in the sport. And I completely think that being in a top heat, for me at least, is important. And that's just from a mental side of dude, CrossFitters are very good at score topping. And I don't mean by cheating or by, missing reps. I mean, dude, if you do a 10-minute AMRAP and you perceive that the top rounds are going to be 11, and then you see someone do 12, well, now your brain can comprehend that, 12 is humanly possible. And we're very good at that. And I don't just mean top-level competitors. I mean anyone, dude. And if you look across competitions, I mean, I'm sure there's some outliers. But, dude, it's kind of like a chicken before the egg. Does the last heat always have the best times because it's the best athletes? Or do they have the best times because they've had a chance to watch the workout and watch athletes' strategies play out and watch where they struggle and where they need to speed up and slow down and watch where, kind of develop a strategy by observation, dude. So yeah, I think that placement matters. And like I said, man, the Open is a competition, and anyone that doesn't think it's important, I mean, I understand, guys saying things like, look, the only thing that matters is you just got to get to regionals. And that's a good strategy for someone if you just are able to keep your head down and stay mentally tough and mentally focused, not worry about things around you, and you create the pace or you set the pace. But I definitely don't think it can hurt being in the last heat, man. I'll tell you right now that, I was talking to somebody today, and I don't think I go faster necessarily around people. I think I go faster when I know that it counts. Like, you know what I mean? Like, training speed and game speed is different. And I think for me, game speed is different because there's something on the line. It's important. It's not just another training session. There's a result that happens from this. There's a placing that happens from this. So, but at the same time, dude, I mean, you can feel when people are passing you and you're going to say, shit, I need to speed up. Or you can feel when you're out ahead of the pack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But yeah, man, I do. And just in short, yes, I think it's important. And I think, I don't think there's been many people who started in the last heat and ended up, in the first heat and ended up in the last and went to the games. You know what I mean?
So you've done pretty well in the past during the Open. How did you place last year at the Open?
I think I've either placed 8th or 9th both years in a row, and I've kind of had like one bad workout where you can play the numbers game. You're like, oh, if I had gotten, like 4 more snatches last year, I would have been in the top 3 in my region. And the year before that, I think if I had done like a round or a half a round more on the 11.1, I would have been like top 4. But, I think everyone can say that, man. But yes, I do think it's important, man. And, I could be, talk to some person who's been more successful than me, and they could show me a different perspective that might make me think different. But for me and kind of the way I like to do things, I like to position myself in a manner, or at least do the best I can to position myself in a manner that will hopefully, give me a better chance of winning. You know what I mean? And sometimes CrossFit, you need a little bit of luck too, man, which is, it's just a very strange sport. But yeah, I think positioning does matter, man.
So since you've been, it appears that you're better this year than maybe last year. Were you like peaking for the Open, or are you seeing this as just another training session?
I say no to both answers. No, first of all, I think I'm better this year, and I had a pretty cool article written about me from this guy from HQ, Jerry Ruggiero, and I alluded to him and Pat Sherwood yesterday that the biggest difference in my game is two things. And it's, number one, I am more mentally there. And with respect to humility, I think I've had the physical tools to go to the games the last 2 years, but I have not been good enough. And the reason I haven't been good enough is because it's just not about the physical tools. It's about the mental approach, and it's about dealing with adversity mid-workout or mid-competition. And it's about getting the snakes out of your own head and trusting your fitness and letting your body determine your outcome and your will determine your outcome, not your mind. And so I think that's the biggest change in my game. And I can't go without saying that, I did for the first year this year hire a coach and CJ Martin at CrossFit Invictus, and I've made tremendous physical gains. But the biggest thing I can attribute to hiring CJ specifically is that CJ demands his athletes to be mentally tough. And when I say demands, I mean that he is as focused on your approach and your attitude and your perception of your fitness and your ability to deal with adversity during competition, mid-workout, before workout, after workout, as he is your physical result. And if you look at his athletes across the board, yes, he coaches some of the best athletes in the world in Josh Bridges and Camille LeBlanc and Jenny LeBall and Asia Bartow, and to name a few. But dude, if you look at all of these people, they're not just all extremely physically gifted. They're all extremely physically gifted and extremely mentally tough. And I think that CJ plays a huge role in that, man. And if you talk to him, you're gonna get that from him. His normal members in his gym, there's a different feel over there at Invictus, and they're doing it a little bit different, man. And the feel is that, whether you're a games caliber athlete or whether you're a person that's just looking to use fitness as a vehicle for health and longevity, everyone over there is mentally tough. And I think that is built in inherently in his program. And I think that some of it is due to kind of just being around CJ and interacting with him and hearing some of his better athletes and Josh Bridges kind of echo his approach. But it's also seen in his training sessions in the sense that, I fail more often in training than I ever have before. And I don't mean like fail on workouts necessarily, but we do things that force your body to either break down and figure out a way through it, or you adapt and break through the wall. And I've never really had that in training before. I've never had to come to decisions mid-workout where my body physically can't pull anymore, or you know what I mean? And I think there's merit to that, man. I think that it's not blasting yourself every day, because by all means, CJ has forgotten more exercise than I think most people will ever learn. But there's an intelligence to his program coupled with a bit of mental brutality that really elicits a pretty cool stimulus, man. And I think that, CJ has forced me to eliminate, some negativity in myself in terms of, my past performances and struggles, and has really forced me to it's kind of like, mid-workout, dude, you've got a choice. You can either fucking fail or succeed, to put it simply, and it's going to be up to you, man. No one else is going to be out there with you. So I think that's the biggest difference, man. It's just, that's why my game has risen. And I think that, I'm sure there's going to be adversity during the Open, and I'm sure I'll be able to look back at a workout regardless of my final placing that I can look at and say, man, I kind of broke there mentally. And I'm sure the same is going to happen in regionals, but I think that I'm prepared for that. And I don't think I could ever honestly say that. And in terms of training, no, we're not peaking for the Open. But I would also be lying to you if I said that we didn't prepare for it. We've been doing doubles and triples since August. But those doubles and triples have been leading up to May 17th through 19th in West Palm Beach, not for the Open. But, we've prepared ourselves to be ready for the Open and do well in the Open and let our fitness show in the Open and kind of not for anyone else, but kind of prove to ourselves that, we can play with the big boys. And, it's a gratifying thing when you're successful, but if adversity comes, you also have to be be willing to accept it and fucking be strong enough to continue to perform, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that the most of the mental toughness is coming through the programming, or has there been like, uh, I I know that CJ is out in California and you're in Atlanta, Georgia. Are there phone conversations? Is there things that he's saying? All things he's. I know you've been out to
Yeah,
training
yeah.
camps with him. Is there stuff that's happening in person that can only happen through interaction with CJ, or is it purely through the programming that you feel the mental toughness is really being built?
It's a bit of both, dude. CJ's a pretty awesome coach in the sense that, and I don't want to give away a lot of his secrets because he'll probably text me if he hears this and be like, "Oh, dude, come on, you know what the fuck." But he is really, really good at, I write him notes, every week about my program. And it's not just my result. It's how I was feeling. It's what happened to me mid-wad. And he wants those notes detailed, man. And I kind of demand the same things out of my clients is, dude, these notes that you're providing, because I'm all the way on the other coast, they're going to personalize my program more than any result. Because, CJ's not going to get a lot from, hey, man, I cleaned 350 today. That's a 8-pound PR. He's going to say that's great. What he really wants to hear is hey man, legs kind of blew up during that fourth 800, breathing got high. You know what I mean? And he's going to be able to use his intelligence and his background and his experience to tweak his template based on my notes and based on what he sees as far as my successes or failures within those notes. And dude, he's gonna respond back to me with honesty. He's not scared to say, hey dude, this was a bad day at the gym, or hey man, you need to fucking just step up to the plate. We just did a pretty brutal, like 3-part session of our third session of the day, and it was one of those things where I figured out really quickly that I am not very good at cycling heavy hang power cleans, and within that I shot video of myself within the workout, and I'll be able to send that to him and kind of tell him what went through my head mentally when I started to get frustrated, and he'll be able to kind of assess it on a coach's level, but also probably tell me, what, dude, it doesn't fucking matter that you're not good at that. There should have been a point where you needed to speed up on this or do that to make up for it. So he's really good at being honest, and sometimes that honesty hurts, you know what I mean? But that's all part of that mental toughness, and I think that's what creates is our interaction, and the fact that I can shoot him a text even if I know I'm not going to see his notes before the end of the week. I shoot him a text and like, dude, fucking blew up today, blah 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 blah, or hey man, you've got me doing 5x800s, dude, I'm really smoked. I feel a little bit under recovered. I'm just going to come and chill and ride the airline, and he'll provide an even better solution, or say, hey brother, go with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how do you think your interaction with CJ has affected your ability to coach other people? Are you like learning from him and using those methods, or do you kind of have your own style?
Well, I think, dude, the thing about coaching, right, is that even if you have your own stance and your own style on coaching, you have to continue your education, and you can't be closed-minded, and you can't be closed-minded the more successful you get, and I think that CJ does a great job of that, in the sense that he's a pretty successful coach in this area, in this arena, and he's got great athletes, and his teams, I think he's got 2 teams in the top 10 in his regional right now out of his gym, and they've gone to the games. His teams have gone to the games, not to mention his individual athletes, every year, and done well, man. And he's got a great gym, and he runs a great operation. And I think what CJ does a great job of, man, is the fact that, he continues his education. And it's funny, my training partner, Zach Anderson, and I, you guys should talk to Zach. Zach's, right now, I think like 18th in the world and 3rd in our region. The guy I train with every single day. We went out to Invictus for a training camp, and one of the most gratifying things that we saw with CJ was when we walked into his office, he didn't have pictures of all his athletes. He had fucking walls full of books. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that, and Mike, I've said the same thing to you, dude. And walking into your office, little plug for you there, buddy, is that, dude, that's a good sign, right? You don't want to fucking walk into your coach's office and see nothing but, electronics and fucking cool, like pictures of people. You want to see that he's continuing his education and trying to take as many avenues to learn as many things as possible, even if he doesn't agree with them. right? He wants to expose himself to as many things as possible. And I'm not trying to plug CJ's programming. I'm just being honest and saying that, dude, that man wants to know everything he can about the sport or the sports in which are covered in CrossFit so that he can use it and evaluate whether he thinks it works with his athletes. And I think that's why, not only does he have great athletes, but I think that's why his athletes are successful, man.
Very cool. I think we're gonna have to get your friend on here sometime in the near future. And I know you and I you and I were talking the other day or yesterday on the phone, and we were talking about some coaches may be over-analyzing the way they program and maybe kind of hamstringing the success of their athletes by maybe being too conservative and overthinking movement selection and whatnot. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I've always maintained, and this is something I've said to you, and I think you agree with it, is that, first of all, the best, who is the best coach? If you're an athlete and you're on a program, and you think wholeheartedly that the program you're on is the best program for you, it doesn't fucking matter whether an accomplished exercise scientist could look at it and say, dude, this is bullshit. If your athletes believe wholeheartedly in your program, it doesn't matter whether a monkey's fucking slapping paint on a wall. Dude, if you're seeing benefits from it and the athletes believe in it and they're continuing to progress, well, dude, that is the best program for that athlete. Right. And I think that to answer your question, I do think that there are some coaches out there that I don't want to say are too smart, but I think they let their knowledge hinder them and they try to be too perfect. Right. And chasing that type of perfection is in my opinion, not going to really get you anywhere. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't. There is no such thing as a perfect training program, man, because there's too many variables of human beings, and within the variability of human beings, there's too many variables within that individual. You might have fucking slept shitty last night. You might be, it might be the end of the week versus the beginning of the week. You might just be better on Tuesdays than you are Monday because that's how the fucking God made you. You know what I mean? So it's like I think that. And this is something I'm learning as a coach, is that, dude, you kind of have to realize that, dude, this is science, and it's an experiment. And the worst thing that I don't think coaches tell clients is that, dude, this is a science experiment. And the worst thing about science experiments is sometimes they fail. And it doesn't mean that the person that made it is a bad coach. It just means that, dude, the experiment failed, right?
Yeah, not every cycle can be the success they hope it to be.
Yeah, man, and it's one of the things.
Go ahead.
You gotta. I'm speaking this based off a little bit of experience in coaching, but a lot of speculation as well. And you can probably answer this better than I can. Is that, dude? You have to educate yourself the best you can and consume yourself with information and sort and experiment and see which you think works. But for every athlete that you could sit there and show me that, this is science, exercise law, you could find 5 others or 10 others that could disprove your theory, So at the end of the day, it's like, it seems as if sometimes these are shots in the dark, and I can tell you, I'm not going to name names, but I think that there are coaches in this game that don't have as much intelligence as others, but they still have successful athletes just because they kind of have their formula and it kind of continues to work, and that's kind of what they're going with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, hey, go with the result. Don't worry about I think a lot of times so many people get caught up with what somebody's saying rather than the results they're producing. What do you think? I mean, I'm going to change the subject just a little bit here, but CrossFit is a sport, and we're doing strength and it's kind of a strength and conditioning sport, but there are times when you need to be practicing the sport of CrossFit, and there are times where you need to be doing like strength and conditioning for the sport. What do you think the right ratio of like smart strength and conditioning programming versus practicing CrossFit? What do you think that right ratio is, and does it change throughout the year?
I think it changes throughout the year. I think it has to. And I think, Rich is an anomaly in the sense that, in a positive way, I think Rich is an anomaly in a positive way in the sense that, he doesn't believe, from what I understand, in periodization. And he kind of does go by the CrossFit method of prepared for anything at any time. But I think that, for the rest of us mortals, that it's one of those things where, if you know when the competition is going to be, that it's smart to periodize. Now, with that being said, I think it also differs athlete to athlete, man. And I think that you've got some athletes based on, what they need to work on and skills and strengths and level of fitness, where you might be able to get, pure conditioning later on in the season, closer to the competition. And some people might have a baseline condition that's just not up to par, and they might need to work on that earlier. With that being said, I'm talking to my good buddy Mike McGorvick. We just last night kind of sent each other through 2 days of programming, and Mike is a phenomenal athlete, you know what I mean? And our programs, Mike and I are kind of built the same, but our programs are completely different, dude. And I'll tell you right now that, I think that, in terms of what I do, I snatch heavy twice a week for load or for reps or for both, and I squat at least heavy at least 2 times a week, if not 3, and I clean heavy at least 2 times a week for load or reps or both, and I go overhead in a loaded fashion or in a gymnastics fashion almost every day, if not every day, and it's one of those things where you might have another athlete and their program might look completely different,
Right. Yeah, I personally have athletes that are they're all on very different looking programs. I mean, there's going to be maybe 3 or 4 different styles that you might end up with depending on what day you're preparing for, how far out you are from competition, and then what kind of experience you have as an athlete and what you need to shore up. Are you weak? Do you have a lot of endurance? Are you strong? Those are all things that need to be addressed.
Yeah, exactly, man. And it's interesting to use Mike as an example versus myself. Mike and I have competed kind of friendly rivalry for the last 3 years now, right? And Mike's been just as successful in the sport as I have, and he's been on the precipice of the games just like I have the last 2 years. Right, especially 2011 when we both were in podium position, and then we both ended up kind of fudging the workout and losing it. And Mike trains under James Fitzgerald, and Mike, I guess from what I understand on Mike's program, OPT views Mike's strength, his strength base is that Mike is stronger than most athletes, but Mike needs to work on his movement and his engine a little bit more. Like fitness. So, Mike doesn't really lift as much, you know what I mean? And, Mike told me the other day that he hasn't front squat in however long, like a significant amount of time. He front squatted 390. And I said in my program, I front squat heavy like twice a week.
Yeah, and just to note, that's a big PR for Mike. So he hasn't been doing a lot of squatting, but he's hitting big PRs nonetheless. And that's actually a good example of programming differences. Mike is one of those guys who doesn't have to lift heavy all the time in order to keep improving on strength and speed. So different athletes are going to respond differently.
Yeah, and I'll tell you for a fact that, before Mike and I started with OPT, with CJ and Mike, before Mike started with OPT, we were about equal on strength. I had him on some things, he had me on some things. He's still a better front squatter than me. I'm now a better back squatter than him. We cleaned, within 10 pounds of each other, 5 pounds of each other. So we had a similar strength base. I'm smaller, but it's kind of funny in the sense that in using that scenario that we just listed, Mike barely does any lifting, and I lift, I feel like hamburger meat right now because I've done so much more.
Matt, real quick, I'm going to have to cut you off because we actually have to go. Anything you want to promote real quick? Real quick, like 10 seconds.
I want to promote Barbell Shrugged and how great they are, and go ahead and listen to that podcast and learn something.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Matt. Everyone, make sure to go to barbellshrug.com and sign up for the newsletter and check out the full video podcast on YouTube. Thanks, guys.